Good evening, everyone, and happy Tuesday. It's Tuesday, December 19th, and thank you for joining me tonight for our last Learning Live of 2023. Raise your hand if you are still in denial that 2023 is almost 2 weeks from being finished. Um, the other day I heard someone talking about the fact that New Year's was in a couple weeks, and I thought that they had absolutely lost their mind because in my mind New Year's is still several months away. But here we are, and while originally I don't think we had planned to do a learning live tonight, I saw some really great inspiration that I wanted to recreate and share with you tonight. And what better way to do that than through a learning live? So, as everyone's tuning in, hello and good evening. This is Sheri from the Papercrafters Workshop, and we are here with our last learning live. And we are going to be playing with Colorista watercolor markers and making some different trees. Now, I hesitate to call them Christmas trees. To some degree, that's what they are, but depending on your color choices, you can really make these any kind of tree that you want. And they are so easy. If you can draw a triangle, you can make these trees. Because that's really all it comes down to is filling in triangles in different ways. So I've got a couple of different samples that I've been playing with. And we've got these two here. This is kind of where we're going to start tonight, and just your color combinations make a huge difference. You can see where I did kind of color outside the lines, and I will talk about that when we get into the demo. Then we've got these guys here that I'm not thrilled with the blue down here, but the technique is there, and we'll get into that. And then this one turned out super cool as well. So tonight I am going to be using Colorista watercolor markers. They come in two different sets. There's the Vibrant and then there's the Botanic. And really they are just a water-based marker. So if you have Tombow markers, if you have aqua markers from Spectrum Noir, if you can kind of water them down with a little bit of water, then they will work for these techniques. Do not try this with your alcohol markers like your Copics or the art markers. They will not work for that. The other thing I'm going to be using, which I don't actually have the box for anymore, but it is my Colorista metallic markers. These do have a water base to them, and so they will also work very well for these techniques. And then lastly, I'm going to be doing some little accents with the fine line pens. What else do you need for this technique? You need some acetate or a clear acrylic block, anything that you could put your markers onto. I, of course, have some paper towel. I've got my spray bottle with some water, as well as just a little jar of water. I've got some paint brushes. I'm leaning towards more of the flat brushes tonight, and you'll see why. Not to say you can't use a round brush, but the flat works quite a bit better. And then last but not least, watercolor paper and low-tack tape. Now I am using the Sizzix low-tack Makers tape tonight. Watercolor paper tends to be a little bit softer. So while you absolutely could use, our favorite yellow tape from Spellbinders, just make sure you take some of the tack down if you're going to use that. I do find that on the watercolor paper, this does pull at times, so that's why I'm sticking to the Sizzix. You could use washi tape as well. Anything we just need it to mask and kind of give us that triangle shape to fill in. Sorry, my hands don't make very good triangles, but all right. So the first technique I'm going to share with you tonight, and I do have Matt here manning the comments, so he will try to get me to catch a breath and jump in if you have any questions. The first technique I'm going to share with you tonight is doing these watercolor striped kind of trees. And you could do it all, different shades of green or other colors. Here I've picked some blues and greens, which I think turned out really nicely. You could use the purples. I may actually go non-traditional for this second one to share that it doesn't have to be cool colors. So I've got my watercolor paper here and I've got my maker's tape. And what did I say off the top? As long as you know how to draw triangles, you can do these techniques. So I'm simply going to take strips of my paper, sorry, not my paper, my tape, and I'm going to make my triangle here out of my tape. And that's not centered. So let's try and center it a little bit better. There we go.
OCD much?
Matt's saying I've got OCD. He's darn right. All right, making sure. You know what? If it is not centered or if you do have boo-boos like I do, absolutely you could just cut these out and pop them up on your card base. But hey, if you don't have to. And as much as I'm showing this technique on a 4x6 piece of watercolor paper, if you had the Vicki Boutin foundation paper or maybe just a full strip, you could use these on layout projects as well. These do not have to be cards. You could create a really nice scene on a piece of Vicki Boutin foundations paper to build your photos around. This technique works pretty much anywhere. All right, so I've got my triangle. Give it a good little rub down. Pretty even, not too bad. And I think this time I'm going to try grabbing 5 different colors. So I'm going to start with, let's do this one. This one is called Crimson, so that's more of a red. This one is Rose Pink, so that's a little bit lighter. And then maybe I will go into, oh, what about this one? This one is Red Violet. Then I have Purple. And then I have this one here, which is Heather. So that gives me a really nice kind of gradient here. And so that's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to take one of my longer pieces of acetate. This is just going to be my paint palette. And I'm just going to take my marker. I tend to like to use the brush tip. These markers do have more of a bullet tip as well as the brush tip. I just like the coverage that I get with the brush tip. And I'm just going to scribble here on my acetate. And I'm going to do that for all 5 colors because then they're ready. This is also a good way to just make sure that you like the color combination that you've chosen. And then this one is the Red Violet. Try to keep them in order so I remember this one is Purple. And then the Heather is the last one. There we go. So I've just got them scribbled out. You can always go back in and add more if you end up using all of your ink here. I do have a little yellow spot here on my paper, so if this looks a little bit funny, don't worry too much. I've got my paper towel. The other thing, so yeah, I've got boo-boos here because I got a little overexcited and colored outside of the lines. If you really do want to keep this pristine, this is where you can either add more layers of tape, or I'm just going to grab my Post-it notes and just really, oh, and I'm getting ink on my fingers. I'm touching my palette. That's okay. I can go back in, or I may not even need to.
Are you wasting Post-it notes?
I am not wasting Post-it notes. I am utilizing the tools that are at my disposal. And hey, depending on what these look like when they're done, they may end up in Chris's junk journal.
I'm going to tell Darlene.
You're going to tell Darlene on me. Well, you know what? I think she would approve of these ones. So let me just fill this one in a little bit more. All right, so I'm done with my markers for now. I'm just going to move them out of the way. And here is where I am going to grab one of my flat brushes. I think with this one, I'm going to go with the smaller one because I do have the 5 colors. Got my water. I'm going to bring my paper towel over here just so I can blot as needed. Everybody can see. Okay, are there any questions so far, or everybody's just
settling in.
settling in? Is anybody wrapping while they're watching? I know I'm not even close to the wrapping stage, but
Wrapping what?
and by wrapping, I mean wrapping gifts, not wrapping, hip hop songs. Yeah, beatbox type things. All right, so I just get a little bit of water here on my brush, dab it off a bit, and I'm going to grab color number 1. And literally all I'm going to do is make a nice horizontal stripe here at the top. And you do want to go kind of lightest to darkest. And then I could do a little bit more. I'm going to go down a little bit, leave a little bit of space. Now, if you notice, that second one actually looks quite a bit later, but that's okay because I'm going to grab some of that next darker color and go over that same spot.
Carol says she should be wrapping, but this is more interesting.
This is more interesting. Well, thank you, Carol. All right, I'm going to go now into my next color.
You missed a spot.
I definitely missed a spot, and I did that on purpose. I do like having that little bit of a gap in between, but maybe a little bit less gap. All right, let's go into color number 3. Now, when you're doing watercolor of any kind, the more water you have, the lighter your color is going to be. So if I want really intense color, I'm going to want less water if I can manage that balance. All right, now I'm going to go into this dark one. And notice I didn't even clean my brush. They're all very complementary colors. This one, if you can see, it's a little bit dry going on. So maybe I do need just a little bit of water and a little bit more color. And I'm going to...
Mari says she hasn't even started wrapping yet.
Oh, hello, friend Mari. How are you doing? Mari loves the coloristas too, so I'm sure she could teach us a thing or two with these wonderful markers. All right, and then I've got my darkest purple down here that I'm just going to fill in this bottom one. And it's okay. Look, I just touched my 2 colors.
Yeah.
That's okay. Matt gasped, but that's okay. All right, a little bit more.
For the audience.
There we go. All right. So there's got some funky stuff going on here, which I'm really, really loving. I'm loving these colors. Now I'm going to take my Post-it notes off. Everything, I mean, our use of water is pretty minimal. So the tape and the Post-it notes really are more of a visual barrier and just kind of protecting if we are getting a little bit sloppy. I can still pull this off. Even though this area is still a little bit wet, it's not running too badly. I'm going to pull this off, pull this one off, pull this one off. And look at how nice and crisp that looks now. Matt is giving me a round of applause. So what I would suggest if you like this technique is maybe get a bunch of pieces of your watercolor all kind of lined up, all taped up, and do them all at once. And then just kind of let them sit to dry while you maybe change color schemes or try one of the other techniques. For the interest of time tonight, I've got my little heat gun. Please bear with me if the noise gets a little bit loud. I'm just going to heat up this area and get it dry so that I can show you the next step. And really, there doesn't have to be a next step. If you like this the way it is, then you could leave it right at that. Stick on your sentiment, attach it to your card, and call it done.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Matt says sounds like a plan to him. So you know what we're expecting now is that he's going to do a watercolor tree for my Christmas card. As he laughs and laughs. All right, so this is pretty dry now.
Anybody have a card I can buy?
Matt's asking for volunteers if anyone wants to make a card on his behalf. So now this is nice and dry. And like I said, just like this one here, you could really just leave these like they are. But sometimes we like to have a little bit more zhuzh to them. So this is where I am going to pull out the fine liner pens. And sorry, I just need to take a quick sip of water. Excuse me. So you guys know me. You know me by now, and you know that I like my nice clean lines. I like my nice orderly, clean and simple kind of look. And even this little bit of watercolor, it's got a little bit less clean and simple than maybe you would expect from me. But here is where you can really bring some doodling and some freehand work into this nice, crisp, orderly piece of creative and be okay with it. So out of the fine line pens, I'm grabbing the Sublime Purple, and I'm simply in nice long strokes. I'm just going to doodle a border. And you know what? I'm not necessarily going right to the line. I'm just creating some nice doodling edges, giving it some definition, giving it a little bit more of an artsy look, and maybe I'm going to do some little dividers here in between some of the different strips. And I kind of like how that just defines what our tree looks like. As much as the clean, crisp lines are pretty cool, this to me just takes it to the next step. And then if you wish, you could then just, with very simple lines, add in your tree trunk. Maybe we'll define it just a little bit more. And you know what? I'm looking at this now and wow, that tree trunk really is not centered.
Nope.
But
Tree's
in
gonna fall
nature,
over.
trees do not necessarily follow nice symmetrical lines. And maybe it's just our angle and you know, all that good stuff. And then I can further define this with a metallic marker. So maybe I'm going to do.
Put tinsel on it.
Matt wants me to put tinsel on it. I'm just trying to decide what color. I think I'm going to do the silver. So not only can I add a nice little star at the top there, but we could absolutely just draw some garland. And again, really, we're just drawing kind of curvy triangles. So when I said, if you know how to draw a triangle, you can do these techniques.
Where's the lights?
Look at how cool. Oh, now he's getting tricky. Where are the lights? Well, you know what? Maybe we'll come back to that because I think if you want to see lights on a tree like this, one of the other techniques we're going to do might be more to your liking, Matt.
Okay.
So there is technique number one. It is simply light watercolor horizontal stripes, building in that ombre look to create something really, really cool and fun. If you know how to draw a triangle, you can do this card. Okay, so that one was applying the ink with a brush to the paper. Our next technique, also still going to be using these markers. Let me just clear my space. I'm going to keep these colors out because I think we'll do that for our second card as well, our second technique as well. So with these ones, what we're going to do is we're going to draw our triangles right on our acetate and then smoosh them down onto the paper. If you've taken any of our mixed media classes, either with Chris or with Marcy, and maybe even some with Darlene, you've probably done a smooshing technique before. This is just giving it a tiny bit more definition to make that tree look. And so I'm going to do something similar to this one where I've got the 3 trees going horizontal. I'm going to get this guy out of the way. We don't need him anymore. And get my paper out. So this time, mostly because I've just got little scraps of acetate in my acetate bag. I've got 3 little squares, and I'm going to do 1 for each color. And I think what we'll do, I'm going to use this for reference. So I definitely want to use the dark purple. I did like that crimson, which was the middle one. And then maybe we'll do that one off to the side. So I've got my darkest one that's going to go in the middle. It's going to be the most dramatic, so you want to have that one in the center with the lighter colors going to the side. This one, I have the more dramatic one off to the right, and I really didn't like it. So I'm going to put that dramatic one right in the center. So with this one, you want very little water. You do not want your paper wet. You want to keep it as dry as possible, but then I will also show you how you could potentially fix things if it may be too dry. Taking my marker, I'm simply going to draw my triangle right on my acetate. Can you draw a triangle? I can draw a triangle. And then I'm going to scribble in the middle. You don't need to go to the edges. You can have white space. It's totally okay. All right, this is where my spray bottle is going to come into play. Let's get this. Let's see if we can do this here. So I'm going to do this. I just got the paper towel to absorb any overspray. Really just 1, maybe 2 little smooshes of water. Then face down. Try not to drip. And press. And I'm just going to use my finger to kind of move that ink around. I do have a bit of a dribble. That's okay. It's art after all. All right, so I'm just going to push this so it's absorbing into the paper. And then this is where you have to be a little bit quick, like ripping a Band-Aid, like that. I found when I was doing it too slow, I was getting pooling where I did not want there to be pooling. But there's our first tree, and that is totally okay that it's got a bit more of that rustic look to it. This area up here is a little bit dry, whereas this is very wet. So if you feel brave, you could go in and just spray a little bit of water on there, or use a brush and just get that ink to the point that it's moving. But I don't want there to be too much water on the rest of the card until I get the other trees done. So I'm not going to play with that one too much. All right, another piece of acetate. Let that dry. This one's going to be that crimson.
Margaret's right. She just said art has no rules.
Art has no rule. That is true. You just want to have fun. You want to experiment. And just because something maybe doesn't turn out how you thought it was going to turn out, and I'll talk to that a little bit with card number 3 or with technique number 3, nobody's going to know what you tried to do. So, all right, so here's number 2. I'm going to give it one really good smoosh. And then down the side. And kind of move the ink around underneath the acetate. It is bleeding a little bit together here, which is actually really awesome. Not something to be worried about. And then like a Band-Aid, whoop. So we did lose a little bit of our definition here. We can come back and fix that. I do have some pooling down here, so I can just take my paper towel and lightly pull out that color where I don't want it. And it's starting to look really cool. All right, number 3. Let's just clean this off. And when I'm done, I can just spray this with a little bit of water. Actually, that came pretty clean. But if you still have a little bit of ink on here, just spray it with a little bit of water, then wipe it down, and you should be good to go. All right, acetate number 3. This one still has a little bit of green on from earlier. Let me just quickly clean it off. There we go. And this one is going to be this purple color. So, number 3. Can I draw a triangle? Some days, you never know. It's a bit of more of a rounded triangle, but that's okay.
Isn't it the same color as the first one?
Nope. So the first color was a little bit more on that rosy pink. This is more of a magenta pink. All right, and whoops, don't lose the water. 1, 2, 3, and down. Move it around. And like a band-aid, whoop. Yeah, see, down here, there's a little bit more of a smoosh than I think I wanted. It didn't come up as straight as I had hoped, but we're gonna go with it. We're just gonna go with it. Lighten it up a little bit there. Now I'm gonna try something, and I did not try this when I was practicing, but I noticed here that what I thought was gonna be my dramatic tree, it's actually softening a little bit after putting the other 2 layers on it. So just for fun, because you know it is just art. I'm gonna try doing that dark one again.
Oh no.
Matt's saying, "Oh no, he needs to have faith. Needs to have faith." Just because I want to build up some of that intensity of color. And if it's a little bit smaller than the original one, not a biggie. Not a biggie. Have faith, Matt. Here we go.
If you do less water, it won't mush as much.
And smooshity, smooshity. Little spot there. Whoop.
That's a weird.
It's got a weird line across the middle, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. Okay. Anyways, that added a little bit more color. So I'm happy with that. I am happy. Bless you, Matt. All right. So let's get out the heater and dry this again. Again, if it were me and I was doing several cards, then I might go ahead and just assembly line, do one color multiple times, then move on to the next. But we're going to heat this and just get it a quick little dry. Watercolor is a very fluid and flowy technique, regardless of what different style you do. So having these look kind of like 3 triangle blobs,
They're blobs.
that's okay. It is okay. It gives dimension, it gives depth, and it's okay to kind of break out of your very linear mold and do something different. All right, so much like the last time, this time I think I'm just going to do black. I'm going to do some nice black doodle lines, and this time I think I might do more of like a squiggly line. Give them more of that kind of evergreen fir tree look and very loosey-goosey. So I can go back over a couple areas and down here. And then I'm going to come over here and do the pink one. But this time, I'm just going to stop at the edge of that purple so that it looks like it is tucked in behind. And same over here. And now we've given those trees some definition.
Those look like the kind of Christmas trees you wish you had in the house. Big, bushy.
Big
tall.
bushy trees. Yes, I wish we had a big bushy tree. But you know what? That way I can create my own art. I can make my bushy trees in the art. Okay, this time I think what I'm going to do, maybe I'll take this blue color. So I've got the metallic again. This is crystal blue. Actually, each tree could probably be a little bit different. Instead of doing the swoopy lines for my garland, I can just do dots. And that way it keeps the look a little bit more subtle. It doesn't take away from my watercolor or my trees. But it just, and especially using that metallic, it does give it a little bit of a shimmer and shine as well. If you didn't want to do the metallic markers, you could use stickles or Nuvo drops as well. Let's do purple over here on this one. This is a big one, so we need lots of garland. And I think this time I'm going to leave it without a star. It's almost more like in the woods where you've got the garland happening. And then I think over here I'll do the silver. You could also use a white gel pen. White would look really fun on these. Or you could sketch in some snow.
Carol thinks it looks like there's a person peeking between the trees, hiding behind it.
Oh, right here?
I think so.
Yeah, you could say that that is a person peeking behind the trees, or if you were really, really careful, you could build in a few more colors in behind or create kind of a sky in behind. But you know what? I love the looseness of this. And the silver, oh, there we go. That's showing up a little bit better.
That's easier, yeah.
So that smoosh technique, just by drawing it in a triangle instead of just a blob of smoosh, definitely gives you that tree look. Now, what I will say that for both of these techniques, as well as when we get to technique number 3, if you had a circle that you could trace, you could make these into ornaments as well, or maybe you have an ornament shape. You don't have to do trees. All of these techniques will work in lots of different shapes. What I would probably do maybe for this one is if you have it like an ornament die cut, you could die cut it out and just use the negative space as your template. For the acetate one, I would draw the ornament shape out, put your acetate on top. So say I was wanted to do the P, for example, just because that's what's here on my page. Put the piece that you want to trace underneath, and then you can just trace like that. Spray and smoosh. So lots of different ways that you can transfer different shapes beyond just the tree. But you know what? I think everybody's good with drawing triangles, so that's a great place to start. All right, that's 2 techniques so far. I promise you 3. So here is technique number 3. And here is where my plan kind of went awry. So the example that I saw on Instagram used Q-tips to apply different dots of color within that tree area, within that triangle shape, and create a whole tree out of dots. Well, the metallic markers and the watercolor markers, they all dried too quickly, and I couldn't get the dots as nice and big and fat as I would like. So that then led to me playing around. And I think you're going to like this. I certainly did. It was one of those happy moments where it's like, well, that's not at all what I had planned, but I promised you guys 3. Promised you 3 techniques, so I need to come up with a 3rd technique, and I actually like it even better. So much like technique number 1, I'm going to go ahead and make myself a triangle on my watercolor paper. And try and somewhat get it centered. One last arm here. And you know what? I'm probably way too, I'm way too high. Let me come down a little bit. I've got all this paper. Let's make good use of it. There we go. And number 2. And then here's number 3. So this time I am using the metallic markers. I think I will come back to my Post-its as well, just to protect the extra space. So see, Matt, I'm not wasting them. I am reusing them.
So we're always looking for those 3x3 Post-its.
All right. Oh, there we go. All right, so this time I'm going to take the metallic markers. I'm not going to use the watercolor markers. How are we for time? We're actually not too bad for time.
35.
I can try this afterwards with the regular watercolor markers, but the effect with these ones was actually really super cool. All right, so I've got crystal blue, violet shimmer, and jade mica. I don't know if you can see those on the camera, probably not showing up very well, but I've got blue, purple, and green. That's really all you need to know. So I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to start with, actually, I'm going to start with the purple one. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw dots in my triangle. You can do smaller dots, you can do bigger dots. And this is where, Matt, this might look more like lights or Christmas balls that you were referencing earlier. And just filling in the whole area.
They don't
with,
twinkle.
They don't twinkle. They do have a shimmer though, which is kind of cool. All right, so there I've got my dots drawn in. Take my spray and watch the magic. Look at how cool that is. They just bloom. Oh, I missed a Post-it note down here, so let's see if we can grab it before it's dry.
Good thing you can cut that off the straight line.
Yes, you could cut it off. There we go. So.
You said those are the metallic markers? They're not watercolor markers?
These are the metallic markers. They are a water-based metallic marker. They do have mica in it, though I will say I did try this on some black paper, and it did not have nearly the same effect. So definitely I would keep this on the white. All right, bear with me as I dry this, because we're going to do the same thing with the other two colors. This one might take just a little bit longer, but it's also kind of neat because you can kind of move the color around, but it still has those circles. So they still look like they've got depth and dimension. All right. In the interest of time, we'll just kind of seep up some of this excess on the edges. And all right, next up, I'm going to do the jade mica. It is better if your paper is a little bit more dry in between layers, just because you don't want to peel the layers of the paper up. It shouldn't affect the marker too much. And then do some little dots around. And here we go for spray number 2. So this one, let me bring it up closer. Now I've got those jade dots on there, and I'm going to spray and watch them bloom. All right, again, you don't want too much water, but again, you can let them just kind of run, react.
Could you not just do all the dots and all the colors all at the same time and then spray?
So Matt's question is, could you do all the dots at once and then spray it? You could. I did find, and maybe just because the black paper wasn't working, that if I let the colors dry too long, then they didn't react as well with the water. So that's why I kind of wanted to do a layer, then water, dry, layer, water, dry, just so that you can get them to move. But you know what? If you're quick, you should be okay. Give this a quick little dry. See if I can seep up.
Which heat gun are you using?
This is my Ranger heat gun. The Ranger heat gun has a more diffused heat to it, as opposed to, say, an embossing powder heat gun like the WOW or the Sizzix. So it tends to be better for mixed media techniques. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't necessarily use an embossing gun for this. Just keep it a little bit further away. All right, so that was the teal. I'm kind of worried that now the blue may not show up, so I'm going to switch to This one is copper. So let's just do some copper really quickly. Just do some nice fat circles all around. And we'll give them a spray. And again, just adds that little bit of shimmer and color.
You can see that color jump.
Yeah. So again, I do have a fair bit of water on here, maybe a bit too much, but I'll do one more quick run of heating this, and then we'll peel the tape and see the magic. So you can pick as many colors or as few colors as you want. Even that one color, we have lots of different, give a really magical, soft look to it. All right, get that little spot there. And I got a little extra here. And then once you peel your tape, this one's a bit of a fatter tree, but look at how nice and pretty that looks. Now, once it's watered down, I will say the shimmer is not as intense as when you just use a metallic, but it still gives those nice colors, gives that kind of a vintagey look. And then you could go in and again, top it with your star, add some outlines, put your little trunk on here. And if you wanted that to look a bit more watercolory, again, you can just soften it out with your paintbrush and so on and so forth. So you still need to make some cards, maybe make some tags, maybe just do a New Year's card or plan for, something a little bit more wintry. Well, get out your Colorista markers, get out your metallic markers, get out your acetate, and make some triangles happen. This one here I just did, I used that metallic marker to do a bit of an outline, use the dotted outline as opposed to the garland, and just have fun, no, just like in nature, no two trees are going to look the same. So is no two of your painted trees. One last thing I want to go back to, and I meant to do this earlier, when you're doing this smooshing technique here, remember how I said you want the paper really dry? It's because this is what happens when it's too wet. You actually lose all sense of definition. This one had a bit less definition, but this one lost all sense of definition, so try to keep things dry. All right, so are there any questions, Matt, before I close off for the evening?
No.
All good. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us in our 2023 year of learning. Just because the calendar is changing over in a couple of weeks, well, I guess just over
a week.
Week and a half, let's call it. The learning's going to continue in 2024. We've got some great ideas already. We will be back here on Tuesdays in 2024. And hey, if you create something using one or all three of the techniques I showed tonight, please do post in our Papercrafts Inner Circle. We love, I'm not even exaggerating, we love to see when you guys make stuff. So we'd love to see what you've made with these techniques. And if you are still hanging around tomorrow night, join me for our last What's New of 2023. And I think that could be our last live of 2023. So if you are around, please tune in. If you can't, then catch us on replay. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Lots of Merry Christmases and Happy Holidays.
Thank you. Lots of Merry Christmases, Happy Holidays, all the way back to all of you. Thank you all for an amazing year. And I'm not, you know what? It's definitely something to look forward to in 2024 to see what we've got up our sleeves. Right now, I've got nothing up my sleeves, but that's not going to last for long. All right, everyone, have a fantastic evening, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Good night.